There is something more supernatural on the drawing board at CERN than what is being admitted. Even Adam Barker of Tech Bubble wrote of CERN a while back that with the LHC, CERN are expecting to find other dimensions and open portals to these dimensions. If you have the image of Stargate in your head right now, you're spot on. That's what he said. Now, prophecy in numerous parts of the Bible refer to a coming day when portals will be opened and spiritual entities are going to pass through and come to the earth.
It was 47 years ago when the last astronauts left the lunar surface. Since then, humans haven't ventured beyond the Earth-orbiting space station, but with the discovery of ice and water, the moon is suddenly hot again.
This is Blue Moon.
Billionaire Jeff Bezos unveiling the spaceship he hopes will land astronauts on the moon. Elon Musk's SpaceX also working on a moon mission, while NASA itself powers ahead with Project Artemis. Americans back on the moon in just 5 years, build a lunar base, and one day head to Mars. Former Space Shuttle Commander Eileen Collins.
No human has walked on Mars. To me, that's inspirational. Who is going to be the first person on Mars? Will it be an American?
But a manned mission to Mars is likely 20 years or more away. The future now isn't just about NASA. It's now about other countries and commercial space business. China wants to put its own people on the moon. Meanwhile, SpaceX and Boeing will soon fly astronauts to the space station, taking over from Russia. It's a very sensitive joystick.
It is.
Boeing Chief Astronaut Chris Ferguson showing me the Starliner.
Looks a little like a fighter cockpit, which is why I really like it.
Tonight, 50 years after Apollo 11.
It's time to go back to the moon, this time to stay.
The world again has its eyes on the stars.
Entities are going to pass through and come to the earth. CERN's Large Hadron Collider, the LHC, is the largest single machine in the world, located on the border of France and Switzerland. Its stated purpose is to accelerate subatomic particles by the speed of light and force them to travel in a loop where they then collide. The secular media, rife with non-believers, scientists, atheists, and skeptics of the supernatural, have also all been in a buzz over the global discussion around CERN's seemingly paranormal associations. Although CERN doesn't publicly profess to an agenda in relationship to God or Satan, evil versus good, the spiritual realm as it would be described by Bible believers and so on, recall what some say was just a CERN ritual hoax, which involved video footage depicting what looks like an occult ritual with a group of people all dressed in black cloaks surrounding the statue of the Hindu deity Shiva at CERN, and what appears to be stabbing a woman to death in a human sacrifice. The video ends with the videographer crying out and running away, and of course, when the film became public, experts at CERN said it was all just a joke. But all this does suggest there is something more supernatural on the drawing board at CERN than what is being admitted. Even Adam Barker of Tech Bubble wrote of CERN a while back that with the LHC, CERN are expecting to find other dimensions and open portals to these dimensions. If you have the image of Stargate in your head right now, you're spot on. That's what he said. And then he went on to draw parallels to the biblical story of Jacob's ladder. Perhaps you remember the dream that the patriarch Jacob had as he was fleeing his brother Esau. Jacob leaves Beersheba. He's on his way to Haran, and he comes to a certain place, and he stays there that night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he puts it under his head. He lays down in that place to go to sleep. And as he dreams, it says, behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Then Jacob wakes up from his sleep and he says, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid. And he says, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven, Genesis 28. Now this ladder, described in the first book of the Bible, describes something like a portal from heaven to earth through which God's angels, interdimensional and spiritual beings from another reality, were traveling. When Jacob wakes up, he refers to the location as a gate, much like today's trendy terms gateway or stargate. One of CERN's goals is to recreate Jacob's ladder, according to Barker, and to reopen a portal that is said to have existed between Earth, Mars, Venus, and Saturn when the planets were in alignment many years ago. But whether Jacob's ladder really existed, he says, CERN are pretty sure that other dimensions do, and they're making it their goal to ensure that they open the portal for their use. Who knows?
Time to go forth, become a star-faring civilization.
This is a very different kind of space colony. People are going to want to live here.
It's the battle of the billionaires.
It's time to go back to the moon, this time to stay.
We won a new space race. The races are exciting.
It really is the stuff of science fiction.
Two of the biggest figures in the US tech industry are competing to revolutionize our relationship with space and build the foundations for life beyond Earth. But to understand how space exploration became synonymous with competition, let's take a trip back to the late 50s.
1957 marked the beginning of the space age. Sputnik was in orbit. America was stunned.
This was the space race, the USSR against the US.
They may well ask, why climb the highest mountain?
A clash between East and West.
Khrushchev had good reason to celebrate.
Communism and capitalism.
Why 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic?
An era of optimism and aspiration.
Yuri Gagarin, the first man to successfully orbit the Earth.
Patriotism and nationalism.
John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
So I actually went to Russia 3 times to look at buying a refurbished ICBM.
This is Tesla boss Elon Musk.
I can tell you it was very weird.
He could well be the person who takes the human race beyond the moon to Mars. And this is his adversary, Amazon boss Jeff Bezos.
Can you imagine how Alan Shepard must have felt all those years ago? Must have been pretty cool.
Don't let their relaxed demeanor fool you. When they first came on the scene, these billionaire entrepreneurs had no experience whatsoever in space exploration.
Let me show you something.
But their ambition is wholly serious.
You may know Jeff Bezos because he's the guy who invented Amazon, and he's got this company called Blue Origin.
This is an incredible vehicle, and it's going to the moon.
Earth is the cradle of humanity, but you cannot stay in the cradle forever.
Elon Musk is, I think it's one of those names that you know it even if you don't know why you know it. He's behind Tesla, the electric car company. He helped found PayPal, but it's his company SpaceX that he's really sinking his heart into.
These two tech titans are vying to be the dominant force in space. And if the space race was a test of American capitalism, this is a vindication of it. A victory lap run by a tortoise and a hare.
The minute you think one might be ahead, the other seems to go ahead.
Bezos, the tortoise, is slow-moving, patient, and quiet.
The thing with Blue Origin is that they don't really tell you a lot They're a lot less public than, say, someone like Elon Musk and his company SpaceX.
Musk, the Hare, has become increasingly famous over the last few years for his bombastic displays, as well as some more unorthodox behaviour, such as sampling weed legally on a podcast.
Only the strongest memes survive.
And sharing many dank memes. Their common aim is to make space travel cheaper. And this is perhaps most evident in how they are solving the problem of single-use rockets. This is normally the point where the pricey rocket boosters come crashing back to Earth. But not anymore. They can now land and, crucially, be reused.
We want the things that are in science fiction novels and movies not to be science fiction forever. We want them to be real one day.
The magnates both immersed themselves in sci-fi when they were young, gaining inspiration from such authors as Isaac Asimov and Frank Herbert. Musk, who loves to reference pop culture, included this nod to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in one of his more outlandish moments when he sent his own sports car into space. Musk's geeky playfulness contrasts with Bezos' more earnest approach. Just take their rockets. Bezos named his after American astronauts Alan Shepard and John Glenn. Very reverential, very patriotic. Musk's, on the other hand, was initially called the BFR, which supposedly meant Big Falcon Rocket. But anyone who played the seminal 90s video game Doom will know it's actually a bit ruder. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the ultimate goal of their space exploits is straight out of a sci-fi novel.
Manufactured worlds rotated to create artificial gravity with centrifugal force.
The term that's being used a lot is large space colonies, and what he envisages is that millions of people should be living and working in space. And the reason why we need to do that is because set number of people on Earth, set number of resources, and actually we're using a lot of them up.
I think most likely the form of government on Mars would be somewhat of a direct democracy.
Some people would say he's actually obsessed with the red planet.
Then start building out the city, then making the city bigger.
So rather than living off planet, this is living on planet. He also fears that some humans are going to do something to the world, whether it's war or whether it's artificial intelligence. And he really feels that Mars needs to be this sort of backup planet Earth.
But before all this, the moon is the next step.
I mean, we should have a lunar base by now. What's going on?
In space resources. We have to use them. We were given a gift, this nearby body called the moon.
As there are shortages in various minerals and things like that, things that are available on the moon are getting more enticing and more commercially viable. I think what makes the moon so exciting is it has quite a low gravity. It has a sixth of the gravity of Earth. And so people are looking to go to the moon and using it as a launch pad to travel to the rest of the solar system.
This is not going to get done by any one generation.
This multi-generational campaign is truly a battle for hearts and minds.
Expand the scope and scale of human consciousness. I find that incredibly exciting. That makes me glad to be alive.
My friends who say they want to move to Mars, I say, look, do me a favor, move to the top of Mount Everest for a year first, because that's a garden paradise compared to Mars.
In this race, there are two finish lines, one for Bezos and one for Musk. So much of their success may depend upon generating belief in each of their own visions.
The concept of destroyer that I explained a moment ago, and our time, unifying, quote, ancient mythology, religious art, and modern physics. Additionally, and perhaps even more important, there's a significant section of CERN that is built upon the Saint Genus Poili, which is a commune in Ain, a department of France. In Roman times, the Saint Genus Poili was called Apaliacum. The name Poili comes from the Latin Apaliacum with the Latin suffix lacum, which denoted possession. But the town and a temple were dedicated there in ancient times to Apollyon, the destroyer, the Shiva Horus, if you will. Apollyon is also the angel of the bottomless pit, referred to in Revelation 9:11. Of course, I can only speculate, but I note the connection between Nimrod, Apollo, and Abaddon, Apollyon at CERN, and the history of the region. are all highly curious. Apollo was worshipped by the Romans of that area, as well as the Greeks and in central France. Apollo was equated with the Celtic god Atep Omerus. These two characters were combined to create Apollo Atep Omerus, which can be translated as great horseman or possessing a great horse. In the Celtic belief, horses were closely related to the sun. The interesting thing to note is the connection between this idea of Apollo being associated with horses in France, where part of the LHC and CERN resides, and what the book of Revelation states about Abaddon, where it says, "And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon." End quote. I also note that Revelation chapter 9, after describing how these devil worshippers will be judged during the Great Tribulation period, it ends in verse 21 saying, "Neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries," which is the Greek pharmakia, "nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts." Now, pharmakia is the word that describes the ancient occultic effort to use mind-expanding drugs during rituals in order to open a doorway for making contact with unseen supernatural entities. So, given these descriptions, is it possible that CERN will have something to do with the opening of the bottomless pit described in Revelation 9?